Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We know that hostilities escalated on Saturday following Israel's provocative strikes on Friday on Iran. We'll be talking about the ramifications of the developments as we see as far as the reactions all over. We've also seen, of course, there's fear of regional and global escalation even as we speak. And of course, preemptive strikes that they've claimed preemption. We'll be talking about that and whether credible, evidence exists for there to be any kind of preemption when we talk about, international law. And whether this kind of retaliation, when it continues back and forth, what it will mean for the stability in the region, considering of course Palestine and Israel already, and subsequently as far as America is concerned, what we've seen the President of the United States say, what we've seen all over in terms of the allies also, and what do we foresee as far as Israel and Iran is concerned. All of that today. On Perspective, I have with me Dr. Yamin, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Ahmed Hassan Awan, who's a foreign policy expert. Thank you for joining us. And Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, director of DiploHouse, also is going to join us. Thank you for being with us today. I'm going to go to Hamidreza and then I'll come back to you. Hamidreza, thank you for joining us today. As far as the situation exists at this time, what is the overall, how do you look at the situation at this time? How do you see the reaction, of course the retaliatory strikes that happened, and as the situation develops, do you see perhaps there a stepping back, or do you think that there is of course a very real danger of escalation even now?
Thank you very much for having me. The Zionist regime in Israel has decided to frighten Iran and to attack Iran, based on their announcement to destroy the enrichment capability of Iran, and then they are thinking of and planning for toppling their government here by creating unrest inside the country. The point is that the way they are going on is the same scenario that they usually use. That at the beginning they sabotaged the defense system, and after that they carried out the armed attack against the military commanders and nuclear scientists and civilians in Tehran to start a shock and awe, and then they attacked the defense capabilities in the western area of the country, and after that they attacked the nuclear facilities in Natanz and Fordo, and after that it turned into a full-scale war. And since then, especially after Iran began to self-defense and retaliate by missile attacks, they are targeting civilians more than before, and they are using actually infiltrators and spies inside the country. So today, for example, we had several explosions in different parts of Tehran, and almost all of them were bombing and car bomb, such thing like that. And that is to clearly it is to frighten people. They want to make people afraid and worried about the future, and make distrust regarding the government, and they want to say that the government cannot protect you. They are actually making this danger to you. So that is the way they are working, and they have worked before in Lebanon, in Gaza, in other places.
Hamidreza, there's also, lately we've also seen the president of, Israel, when he talks, he's been addressing the people of Iran, and, overall talking to them. And like you said, there is, of course, whether it's to instill fear or how do you perceive this, and overall the morale of the people of Iran, how do you see things in that sense?
Sorry, I did not have the question clearly.
We are looking at Netanyahu. Netanyahu is addressing the people of Iran. He is, he seems to be openly talking to them. Do you think, like you said, is this to incite fear? Or do you think that, and overall, do you see the morale of the people at this time in Iran?
Part of the scenario by the Zionist regime is military attack and the armed attacks that they have already carried out and they are carrying out. The second part of that was to incite and trigger conflict within the country. So they are trying to turn people against the government and against one another. However, it has united people more than ever before for the past few years. So the unity that the situation has created among Iranians is unique and significant. And for the past 2 years, 2 days, we are seeing many Iranians defending the countries, announcing their readiness to sacrifice themselves for the country, and they are putting aside any political differences. Many people who have been against the, let's say, for example, having dissident people who have been against the government, against the establishment, they are defending country and standing on the side of the government and establishment to defend their country because they have realized that it is about Iran, it's about people of Iran. Israelis are targeting civilians. From the earliest hours, they have been targeting civilians. Many of the casualties and victims are women and children. And they are targeting common people on the streets. They are trying to kill people, and they are trying to increase the casualties because they want to fear people. And it's not going to work, of course.
I want to come, Hamidreza, I want to come and talk more about, of course, the controversy as far as the nuclear capability of Iran is concerned. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go in the studio now. Tughral, there's a lot that is being said, you know, as for, coming from the US also. There's a lot of positioning also, you know, if we look at what Donald Trump is saying. How do you look at what the US has said before in terms of course, knowing about this attack and also, you know, afterwards and you know, saying that perhaps he wanted the deal to happen, but it didn't happen. How do you look at that?
Trump is an unpredictable man. His foreign policy is not very precise, or it does not follow a trajectory which is known to you. In case of Pakistan-India conflict, which happened in May, initially he said that Pakistani and Indians have been fighting over this issue for 1,000 or 1,500 years, and they'll sort it out somehow. And J.D. Vance, his vice president, also initially said that this is their own business and the US has got nothing to do with it. Similarly, in this case also, initially he said that I do not want the Iranians to hit us. But now he's saying that if they hit us, they will get a very strong response. So his foreign policy is made at the spur of the moment, and it is broadcast through his X tweets.
But so if we look at the erraticness, like you are saying, of the President of the United States, that is certainly there. But overall, you think, of course, do you think that the US stands behind Israel at this time?
It is a principal tenet of US foreign policy that they will always support Israel, and they always have bipartisan support. And if anybody
because Iran is clearly saying this, right? The foreign minister,
the Americans also say that. They never deny the fact that they will always support Israel. Israel is their baby, and they will go to all lengths to protect Israel. And the positioning of the US forces in the Gulf and in the Middle East also indicates that they have a very large military footprint in the area, and they are pumping in a lot of money and hardware to support Israel. So whatever Trump says, at the end of the day, he's going to support Israel. He's not going to leave.
Let me include Ahmed Hassan in this also. Ahmed is also, and you know, of course, another statement that the President of the United States made was, you know, he talked about the capability of his forces and his equipment, and he said it is the best in the world, and he wanted Iran to be cognizant of that when they take on Israel. In terms of, we heard Hamidreza also earlier on, in terms of the morale, in terms of the unity, certainly, you know, the Iranians seem to be together in this. What do you perceive will happen in the next few weeks?
Thank you for having me on the show. I think, first of all, in regards to the morale of the Iranian people that you mentioned, I think even the name of the operation, Rising Lion, signifies that Iran aims to destabilize the regime, incite an internal disorder leading to the overthrow of the regime, which they will want that. But like we've seen that it has in fact made the people more unified.
Yeah.
And since almost 45 years, they've been under consistent international pressure and sanctions. It has made them, there will be obvious dissentents will be there, but in general, the morale has remained intact. As for the implications are concerned, I would suggest that it can have far-reaching consequences if the escalation does not stop, because this is a constant game of hedging, balancing against each other, and also ensuring escalation dominance as well at the same time. In generally, before I continue on that, Middle East has never been a region which is dominated by a single actor. It has generally been a region which is multipolar, where multiple poles of power have existed. If you recall the 2015 Iranian nuclear deal, following that deal, we saw the reaction of the Gulf states was very sharp, was very critical of that deal. And they, in fact, even at that time, Saudi Arabia even initiated a war against the Houthis in Yemen as well.
Yeah, but
we also saw the Qatar blockade as well.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to point at is that right now, the Gulf states do not see Iran as a threat anymore as they used to. In fact, they see the Israeli overreach as a big problem right now.
Because also if we look at the situation, I mean, morale of course, and overall the unity within Iran, but it's also true that they've been under sanctions for a long time. So will they be able to sustain a prolonged kind of conflict?
See, if we talk about Iranian survival in terms of economic, they've been doing that for 45 years now. More concerning for me is that if Iran in the coming days puts a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, that can really increase the oil prices around the world. In fact, even for Pakistan, a $10 increase in the Brent crude oil can increase $1 billion for us in our import bill. Similarly, China's stakes are at risk as well, because their entire BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, is primarily dependent upon a free flow of energy. And that blockade of Strait of Hormuz can really undermine the interest of not just the Iranian economy, but also the global economy. And more, just to add to it, in fact, if Iran also, there's a potential that they could also withdraw from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, which can further erode the rules-based order.
Right, fair enough. Let me go on that to Hamidreza. Hamid, there's also, if we look at, of course, the oil situation, we are looking at, Iranian General Esmail Qusari has warned Tehran of, closing the Strait of Hormuz, and around 20% of global oil exports pass through that strait, like I'm sure you know. What kind of this is a crisis brewing in itself, right? And whether making it, of course, the world's most strategic oil choke point. So how do you see and where do you perceive things going there?
That option is always on the table for Iran, and it has all the capabilities needed to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. But I don't think that at the right moment that we are talking, it would be helpful to Iran, or Iran needs to do that right now. Iran has a good capability of self-defense and is targeting Israelis, very well programmed and planned. And if the other countries want to get involved, especially the Western countries, Americans, the British or French and the others, if they want to get involved, Iran is going to retaliate against them as well. If the tension gets higher and escalates and engulfs the whole region, then Iran would be considering blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And I think that even without that, right now the oil prices have risen, and it is inflicting some damage to the world economy because of the actions of the Zionist regime in Israel. So if the others getting more involved, President Trump has just said that the United States might be considering involvement in the conflict between Iran and Israel. Most welcome, because if they get to the conflict, Iran is going to target American interests and assets across the region.
But he's also said that things are going to settle down very soon. Do you think he's being overly optimistic, or do you think that there is perhaps intel that he's going to intervene to try and ensure that there is peace there?
Basically, they are miscalculating the situation. They think that they can bully Iran into an agreement. That was the way they entered the negotiations. That is the way the IAEA Board of Governors actually treated with Iran last week. And the reason behind the attacks was also this, that they think that they can bully Iran into giving up its rights. Iran is going to fight to the end. And as one of the esteemed guests mentioned, Iran has survived for nearly 5 decades, and it would continue to survive. And this time it would be even stronger than before. So if what President Trump is saying is that he thinks that by pressure on Iran, by attacking Iran, and the things that we are seeing these days across the country, they think that Iran is going to give up and to bow down to the pressure. It's totally wrong. So that it would not be the path to an agreement and deal that as he has mentioned. And there is no ground for them to get involved, because if they get involved, Iran is going to strongly and harshly respond and claim casualties from the Americans, and that would translate into death of American foreign policy. Since President Obama, they had the pivot to Asia policy, and they wanted to remove their focus from this region to go toward East and contain China. And they have failed to do so because of the Afghanistan and Iraq war, and after that, the conflicts in the region. And it is the same country who failed to defeat Houthis and Ansarullah in Yemen. And for sure, it cannot stand against Iran, and it cannot actually finish a war with Iran. It would be much worse than what happened in Iraq and in Afghanistan and against Yemen. And the damage would be so significant, not only to the reputation of American military, but also to the assets and interests of the America in the region. Navies or bases would be targeted easily by Iranians, and they would actually would be left behind in competition with China, and they would easily pass them in terms of all the criteria that are important for them. So that involvement. Sure.
Yeah, let me come back to you on that. Dr. Tughral, what about, of course, rising of oil prices, like you said also, is going to be a cause of concern for not only Pakistan, but China also. But in terms of the role of China in all of this, do you see it, extending itself? How do you see that?
The role of China would be limited, in my opinion, because China does not want to get its fingers burnt in a conflict with which it has nothing to do per se. China has good relations with Israel also. China has good relations with Iran. China has tried to bring about a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So China does want a stable region. Everybody wants stability. Nobody wants war. But whether China would be mediating between the foreign nations, I have my doubts, because would Israel accept that kind of intervention? Would USA accept that kind of intervention? Yes, Iran would not mind. Iran would like any powerful actor to come in and try and resolve this issue.
And you think that, and again, like I said to Hamidreza, there is, of course, with the positioning, of course, the US president is erratic, and of course there's a lot of a lot of hyperbole there, and not so much. There are times when we don't know if it will actually translate, but he is also saying that there will be a deal very soon. Do you think that there is that's just his estimation, or you think that is?
Trump wants to be called a peacemaker, a deal maker, but he has not been able to actually have a deal between Ukraine and Russia, which he was touting that.
Or Israel and Palestine.
That was never on the cards, but he was trying to
But it's something he's been saying.
The only place where he was successful was the subcontinent, where he was able to tell both Pakistan and India to conclude a ceasefire, and then he took credit for it. So as far as Trump is concerned, he would like the issue to be resolved, but on whose terms? I think on Israel's terms. And Israel will never allow Iran to have any kind of nuclear program. I think that is their so-called red line. And that is why they are now trying to woo the Iranian people. They had already done this earlier also. They were able to bring down the government of Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953. They launched a coup in which the CIA was involved and MI6 was involved. The Shah of Iran had fled Iran, but they were able to rouse the businessmen in the Tehran market and bring down the extremely popular government of Mohammad Mossadegh.
So you think that this kind of incitement that is happening is targeting that?
Absolutely. And in Iran also there are pockets who are not actually in favor of the clergy. They are there, you cannot deny that. They've always been there. People who don't want the clergy to rule supreme. So to think that there is no opposition against the present Ayatollah Khamenei or the current government, I think that would be wrong. So there are forces which can root. You see, the mere fact that the Israelis were able to eliminate the top leadership, it could never happen without an insider giving them the information, precise information.
But isn't that true that, I mean, I'm going to include Ahmed in this also, that this is true for all regions, most of them.
You're
I mean, you will always find pockets.
You're right. But in Iran, there are people. There are people who can be like anybody and any other place. In Pakistan also, who can be purchased for a certain price. So these people are active and they are being given money. We have seen that in Afghanistan also. The amount of money that the USA pumped in was phenomenal. So they are going to, I think, bring down the government if they can. Whether they can do it or not, that's a big question mark.
Hamid, do you agree? You think that this is going to be an internal kind of coup, or you know, that is the target here?
I think yes, that is objectives. I think Israel cannot afford a long protracted conflict with Iran. If you look at the geography of Israel, Israel has 3 to 4 major airports. Their information regarding their military bases or other key installations are known to Iran. And Iran can, if the conflict prolongs, can target them. So that basically goes against the interest of this entire adventure that Israel is doing right now. So what they hoped for was a quick operation, eliminating the negotiating. In fact, the leadership that you mentioned, which was assassinated, killed by the aggression by the Israeli forces, were actually part of the negotiating team, which were in talks with the US government regarding the nuclear deal. So I think yes, and I think one thing that we should not forget, apart from the indigenous pockets that we talk about, the India-Israel nexus cannot be ignored either. I mean, we already know that Kulbhushan Yadav was found from Iran. So there is Indian presence, and this is not a new nexus that we're talking about. India-Israel nexus has always been there. In fact, this might be sort of a bit off topic, but I think the Muslim world should not be apologetic about what their beliefs are. In fact, if there is an extremism that exists, is the Zionist and the Hindutva regimes that exist around the world.
But you think that, you know, so the kind of reaction that came from Iran, you think that there was, Israel perhaps underestimated the swiftness of it, and they are perhaps, you know, were not expecting them to swiftly react, and to the extent that they have?
I think this is one of the key takeaways if you look at the history of war studies, or even if you look at the recent 20th century events as well. Miscalculation, underestimation of the adversaries has been one of the reasons. For example, if you look at US intervention in Vietnam, or if you look at the US invasion of Afghanistan, it sort of came back to haunt them. Similarly, in this scenario, the reaction wasn't expected by the Israelis, because they were of the optimism and arrogance that existed, that we have eliminated their leadership. We have, even the last year as well, they were able to neutralize a key air defense systems of Iran as well. So they were of the view that even if there is a response from Iran, I sort of disagree to an extent that US is, I feel that in a transition right now.
Okay.
I don't think that they are willing to fully back Israel right now, because if you look at the recent events, before Trump came to power, and he came to power, he did not visit Israel in his Middle East tour. He visited the Arab countries, but he skipped Israel. And before coming on that tour, he also made a deal with the Houthis in Yemen as well, bypassing again the Israeli interest. And this event itself is actually, I think, maybe
something that he wasn't anticipating.
Maybe he was anticipating, but he would not like this to continue, because you have to understand that in foreign policy, there are also bureaucratic and lobby pressure groups as well. As an individual, you might want something, but you are constrained by the bureaucratic pressures as well.
So the thing is that actually the bureaucratic lobbyist pressures, or whatever we may call them, and that nexus with the US is so strong. You know, whatever Trump may personally want, if it's not even, you know, necessarily may not be this kind of conflict. But of course, I mean, there's a very real nexus between Israel and the US.
Yeah.
Let me go to Hamid on this. Hamid, in terms of, you know, what's going to happen in terms of this, you know, the future, the immediate future, and whatever, you know, the US position is on this, do you think that Iran itself, again, is prepared for a prolonged conflict, you know, that can last, you know, maybe months?
Yes, Iran is well prepared for a prolonged war, and it has announced that. And you know, the two sides have long known that this day would arrive. There was no doubt about that. So Iran has prepared itself for that, and time is not in favor of the Israelis. They usually cannot fight prolonged wars. It was the same in Gaza, it was the same in Lebanon, and they usually try to use the policy of shock and awe, as I say, because they want to, they usually start with a huge operation, and they try to frighten the other side, and then try to show to damage as much as possible. And then they step back and try to, through the intermediaries, to stop the war and call for ceasefire and the escalation of the tensions. But it's not something that Iran would accept.
What's happened in Gaza? If we look at what's happened in Gaza, it's you know, we know that the world has not been able to prevail on Israel to be able to for the Palestinian cause at all.
You know, in Gaza, the Israelis claimed that their objective was to destroy Hamas, and they failed to do that. And they claimed that they are going to occupy the place by land incursion and to strike by land, and they failed to do so. And when they saw that they cannot take the control and they cannot fight directly with Hamas fighters, they decided to kill as many civilians as possible, and they just tried to use the air fight against the Palestinians, dropping bombs on them and dropping missiles on them, and that's all they could do. But they could not fight a long war against the fighters on the ground. So that's the same story here. They cannot, according to their estimations, not Iranians, their estimation is that Iran has at least 20,000 missiles. So I expect it to be more than that even. So Iran is averagely launching about 100 missiles a day for the past 2 days, 1 to 200 missiles. So if Iran uses 200 missiles every day, it would be for 100 days, more than 3 months, Iran would be able to target the occupied land with 200 missiles every day on daily basis. That is a nightmare for them. And Iran has shown that, unlike the previous conflicts that they had, the first operation, second operation, unlike those times, Iran is now serious in claiming casualties and targeting and destroying whatever is needed in the occupied land. They targeted.
Thank you so much, Hamid. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your very valuable input on the situation at this time. I'm going to go to Dr. Tughral here. Dr. Tughral, what about the region? We know what's happening as far as Palestine and Israel is concerned. This kind of a situation, extending between Israel and Iran, what do you foresee as the future of this region?
Very dangerous, very dangerous. It can take many other countries, make them part of the conflict, and our own country is standing on a threshold. We have expressed our solidarity with Iran, which we should have, but if we get caught into into this conflict, it will be it will be disaster, because India on one side and Israel on the other side will be very, very difficult.
And of course, like we earlier talked about, as far as Iran and India is concerned, the nexus, that there's a very real nexus there.
It's very strong. It's very strong. One has to be very careful about it. One has to keep one's guards up, one's powder dry, and now not only look towards our eastern neighbor but also towards the west. I don't think it will come to a pass. It will be very difficult for Israel to defeat Iran, because there are 90 million people over there. Israelis are 9 million. Gholamzadeh has talked about 200 missiles being fired every day. They don't have unlimited supply of missiles, but they can fight for a long time. We know from history that the Iran-Iraq war continued for 8 long years, and at that point in time, Iran was at its lowest level of military capabilities. The Shah had left, the established army, air force, navy was not operating, because they were the supporters of Shah. They had left, so they were actually attacking in human waves, and they were targeting each other's cities with probably crude missiles. So the Iranian nation can fight for a long time. So I don't see a scenario when actually Israelis would come and sit in Iran. The only thing they can do is perhaps bring about a regime of their own choice. They can completely annihilate, perhaps not their nuclear facilities, because that is at the heart of this entire
But I
conflict.
want to talk about that. What is let me include Ahmed in this also. Ahmed, what is the capability overall? Do you think that the credibility of this narrative that they've given out as far as the nuclear arsenal or the nuclear capability of Iran?
I think before I come to the question, I just want to continue what Dr. Tughral said. That just want to put a scenario. Imagine a government in Tehran which is pro-Israel, pro-West. What does that mean for Pakistan? It would mean that BLA, India can easily influence the only portion of that border that we share with Iran as well. So that is also, we should be very, very looking keenly as to what is happening in Iran. We might have had differences with them in the past and ups and downs, but this is the moment that we should fully support Iran in whatever means we can, especially diplomatically, because this is also a key aspect of our own Pakistan's national interests as well. We do not want a government in Iran which is pro-India, pro-Israel, or pro-West in general. So
we know, like you said, of course, we know that the Prime Minister has also said this, the Defence Minister also, overall in our support for Iran is there. But don't you think there's a very tight rope here for us and very little room?
Definitely, the rope is tight, but if you look at the longer version of the game over here, it is in our interest to support Iran, because ultimately India is already looking for an opportunity to hurt us back. And in terms of their nuclear installation, I think this question, what we should be asking is, why isn't the international community questioning Israel over their illicit nuclear program, which has been ongoing for decades now? This is the question that we should be asking, not the other way around.
Whatever. Okay. So that's a fair estimation overall. As far as prolonged conflict is concerned, we've spoken about this, and I think Hamidreza also mentioned this. He said that Israel is not prepared for a prolonged conflict and a retaliation that we've seen from the Iranian side. If it continues, what is the downside for Israel, in your opinion?
I think the downside for Israel, in my view, is already showing.
Okay.
If you look at the last year's attack, when Israel conducted airstrikes and missile strikes on Iran, we saw the Western capitals rushing to help Israel. But this time around, we don't see that kind of energy or active role played by the European Union or the Americans this time around, because Israel has really lost credibility over the last 2 years because of their genocidal acts in Palestine. That has really created a sense of you can say a problem internally in those capitals, because we see protests happening in favor of Palestine in Europe, in US as well. So that is also a pressure that is building on those countries. Secondly, like already mentioned, that Israel cannot afford a protracted conflict. It can because and even if the US does support them, US right now is not in that frame of mind to support any conflict of that nature, because they have their eyes more focused on China or containing China right now. This is a distraction for them. So I think from a US perspective, they will also want to come to a resolution, and this is something that the Gulf countries also want. They want to come to a nuclear deal with Iran.
That's what I'm talking. I want to come to that, Dr. Tughral. Do you think that this nuclear diplomacy is something which Ahmed also mentioned? Do you think that once if the situation can stabilize, perhaps the target is for that diplomacy to continue?
That diplomacy is already stopped. You see, there were talks, ongoing talks, and Sunday.
You think that there's no chance?
I don't think they will. I think they have come to the conclusion. The Arabs also don't want the Iranians to have a nuclear capability. Israel also does not want to have a nuclear capability. So I don't think there will be any future anything. Nearest that had happened in the past was in the time of President Obama, when 5+1 powers were able to conclude a deal with Iran, in which they ultimately they said, you are going to give your fissile material back to other countries, and they were able to sort of delay their breakout time by about 10 to 12 years, and they thought that they are going to cover it up. But Trump himself walked out of it in his first term, and he allowed the Iranians to continue with their nuclear program. So now they have achieved the capability of having their fissile material enriched up to 60%.
I'm running out of time, but quickly, do you think that do you think that the world is perhaps not reacting the way that Donald Trump thought they would overall? If you look at all the, like you said also, we look at the conflicts and how he sees himself as a resolver of these conflicts. Perhaps the world is not towing the line so much.
The Europeans at least are scared of Trump. The way they have been rushing to Washington to kiss the ring, and then Trump has been ridiculing them in the Oval Office. First of all, they are worried about him. They are not very sure whether he's going to continue to support them against Russia. So
his erraticness is sort of
the Chinese know that he's going to impose more tariffs. So everybody is worried looking at this person sitting in the White House conducting a foreign policy which is unpredictable, unknown, and he wants to leave behind a legacy of being a deal maker, a peacemaker, which isn't happening. So
I just wanted to add that we talk about Donald Trump being erratic. Yes, we have we've seen his first term as president, but I think this time around he's more focused on reviving the US economy. That is his major foreign policy goal right now. His use of tariffs is more of a pressure tactic, but he's primarily focused on ensuring that US economy is revived. So that in that context, neither it is in the interest of the Gulf economies, neither it is in the interest of the US to have a protracted conflict.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Tughral Yamin, thank you for joining us. Ahmed, Hassan, Awan, thank you for being with us. Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, thank you for being with us today. Overall, of course, a prolonged conflict, it seems, is not something that Israel is prepared for. And when it walked into, of course, this war between Iran and Israel, but the question is that with the oil situation being what it is, with a volatile region the way that we've seen, is the world going to be able to contain this? Is whether we talk about the US, whether we talk about the Gulf countries, whether we talk about the world as we see it today, is it going to be able to play that role to contain this conflict? And that is an extremely important question. Or is there danger of it spreading? Will there be, perhaps some stability, or are we looking at more volatile times? Let's hope that some sense will prevail. Let's hope that we will see perhaps the kind of deal that even Donald Trump is talking about, that perhaps some good news can be expected very soon. We'll know very soon. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.